Hi, I'm Peter Boyles. We are shooting this episode of The Shoot in where I am every morning, the studio for 710 KNUS. Now get sort of full value of where we are working. This is our third episode. Once again, to Dr. Julie McCallan. I'm only alive because of you. All the great stuff I get to do, to ski and motorcycle and get out and go to the gym every day, it's because Dr. Julie McCallan, Cenogenics, please, if you need help, start with the woman. She's the best. So we've done 3 episodes. This is the third one. And we had Tom Tancredo. It was a very emotional episode. We had Dick Wadhams, who was such a home run. And I'm thinking, by the way, the next one will be a real sleeper. But this one's Sean Duffy. And Duffy and I go back, and I think he hung the moon. We'll probably link someplace genetically. My next door neighbors growing up were the Duffys.
Perfect.
For real. And there was a bar in the corner, the old man drank, and it was called Duffy's.
Perfect.
And because everybody's knocking off Duffy's Tavern.
Exactly.
And I can name the bars my dad drank in.
Yeah.
But one of them was Duffy's, and it was made the rounds, Fatulis's, Henderson Brothers, the Grilts, Duffy's.
Yeah.
And then we were all Hibernians.
You got to be a Hibernian with a card, no less.
Sean Duffy, talk about you and politics and how you got here, and then we'll go to the guts of it. But a little bit about yourself first.
Sure. I grew up in North Jersey, Irish kid, in near New York City, and worked in and out of government, but all kind of Republican politics in Pennsylvania for Tom Ridge, and then I ran a conservative think tank, which will shock a lot of people that this guy runs a think tank, but what the heck. And then I got hired 20 years ago to come out here to work for Governor Owens. I was Deputy Chief of Staff. That's how we met. Worked with the great Dan Hopkins, and then since then I've been a public relations consultant, political consultant since I finished with Bill. So
what are we watching happen?
The desire of a group of people to always be right.
The need to be right.
The need to be right. And I think COVID has exacerbated that. We can talk a little bit about that. But I think that what's sad to watch is that there's just this desire to hang on to what you used to have. And to hang on, and it's nostalgia. It's we can't have lost to those people, right? And I think what's happening is that you're slowly getting the point where it used to be a joke about the Republican Party meeting in a phone booth. Well, nobody knows what a phone booth is anymore. Right. But I think that's what's happening because there's this desire among some to not reach out and persuade. And you're never going to insult people into agreement. And so I think that goes for both sides, right? But I think what's happened is this desire that we're going to be right somehow, that there's a secret room where all the facts are, has never proven true in history, and that's where we are.
There's a line in Recovery, and it says the need to be right. Alcoholics and addicts, we need to be right. We're not wrong when people confront us about our use of drugs and alcohol. Remember, alcohol's a drug, but there's a great joke. I met a guy in recovery. He had a great story, and he said, when I was drinking, he said, I took care of the big stuff. He said, my old lady took care of the little stuff. He said, she took care of where the kids went to school, what they were going to have for lunch and dinner.
Paid a bill or two.
Exactly. I took care of who was on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, exactly.
I took care of where the Broncos going to have a winning season.
Yeah. Let me explain this to you.
Need to be right.
Yeah.
And you try to explain that to people. And we had an expression, knuckleheads, when I was a kid, and my brother has a running line that says we should have a crease in the back of our heads from our dad going, what's wrong with you?
Right.
And then you get that shot. But this need to be right, this adamancy, Trump won.
And at election night, sure, there was this weirdness going on, and you start to say, well, wait a minute. And I worked in Pennsylvania politics. I mean, these are professionals in terms of borrowing votes, right? And so, when they did, they all sent everybody home in Philly. I thought, oh, here we go. Yeah. But you got to prove it. That's the little trick we got here.
Got to have receipts.
You got you got to prove it, and because they couldn't prove it, and every judge kicked them down the stairs, it's time to move on.
They can't.
They can't, and that's a real problem because we have a state that, in the 20 years I've been here, has been transformed not to the good.
Agreed.
And now it used to be, well, if our side loses a little bit, we'll come back the next election, and there's not a whole lot that changes. Now we're at an existential point, I think. and you got to win elections. And
You can't rule unless you win.
you got to win. And just saying, boy, we got the perfect candidate in our small group view, and then they lose to a guy like Michael Bennett, who's eminently beatable.
How? Oh.
Good guy, but eminently beatable.
Yeah.
And we put
How
up.
about John Hickenlooper wins?
Right.
How did that happen?
Well, the anger on the other side, the energy on the other side. I mean, Democrats, our mutual friend Ted Trimpa.
Sure.
They're going to win.
Yes.
And they hide if you talk to Democrats, the Clinton Democrats hate the Obama Democrats.
Absolutely.
And vice versa.
Absolutely. Obama and Clinton don't like each other.
And they hid it for 8 years, and they just said, we'll get through it, and, we'll stay together for the kids, kind of thing.
No, we were talking on a radio show about, there's a wonderful book entitled Shattered. I recommend it to everybody, about really how Donald Trump wins, but they start out writing a book, I've been around these guys, on how Hillary Clinton was going to shatter the glass ceiling. Didn't happen. And then that terrible night, and it takes Barack Obama on the phone to tell him he won. And then they began, it was stolen from us. And then again, according to the book, Obama intercedes and says, look, knock it off. Well, nobody's knocked it off.
Right. And now we're at the point where we need to find some candidates. We need to get about the business of winning. And 22 should be the big rock candy mountain for Republicans.
I agree.
And
will it?
I don't know. You can't beat somebody with nobody. And we've got some wonderful younger folks on the bench, if you will. There's a county commissioner in Douglas County named Abe Layden, who's fabulous. We got some young guys and ladies coming up, but. You got to have some messaging. But you got to get in there and fight. You got to be in the arena. And talking about exotic knowledge is not going to get there.
The Irish guys are here. Sean Duffy, Peter Boyles, North Jersey Irish. What you said your granddad was born on the boat coming over.
Yeah, he came over from County Mayo. And
you ever been? You ever taken the tour?
Yeah. I haven't been to Mayo, but I've been to. But my cousin Francis Duffy,
not an ex for a middle.
No, he survived that, but he was a Green Beret in Vietnam and serious cat, and so he's traced us back as far as you can go till you run out of.
I bet my brother's son and my brother do that, and they got pictures of grandma and my grandfather and.
Yeah, my granddad was a coal miner in Scranton, Pennsylvania, near Scranton, Archibald, Pennsylvania.
Boy, an Irish coal miner.
And had a black lung and lived to be 95.
Sure.
And chewed tobacco till about 2 days before the end. And he was
hard to believe the
tough
Irish
old
ended
boy.
up as coal miners.
Yeah, right. Yeah. There weren't a lot of Irish stockbrokers.
No.
And so he was in the coal mine, raised I don't know how many kids, and and my dad and they all went to World War II. My dad didn't. He had a bum leg, but all his brothers went to World War II and all.
And they were all North Jersey guys.
No, they're northeastern Pennsylvania.
That's even worse.
Yeah, it's even worse.
That's where Kevin Flynn's from.
Yeah. They kept. Well, we used to tell stories. They took the train till they said, "Well, it's time to get off."
Yeah.
And he got off, and they went to coal mines, and that was that.
Kevin Flynn, who I hope would someday, and I want him to sit in here and do it with us, do the shoot. I want him to run for mayor, and they grew up in Scranton.
Yeah.
A bunch of Irish from Scranton. Their claim to fame is Larry Holmes chased him home from school, him and his brother.
Good thing he could run.
It's a good thing you could outrun Larry.
Yeah.
But, and he's got that. And there's something, John O'Hara stuff, the Irish, the last hurrah, the Irish politicians. Can you relate to that at all?
Yeah, that's a great question, Pete. I mean, I do. I love the fight. I really love I love to knock it around. I love authentic politicians who come in and say what they really think.
Yeah.
Owens is that way.
You know what? He and I had a falling out, but I got to tell you something. He was a great governor.
He was a great governor,
he really was.
Despite his staff. But we did the best we could. But he was exactly the same. Yeah. When the cameras were on, the cameras were on.
I thought so as well.
And he loved a good fight. Oh. And he but that's what I love. I love the real meaningful fights, though.
Best fight you were ever in.
Best actual fight?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, gee whiz. Yeah, guy down the street decided, hey, I want to take you on, right? So I said, well, that'd be fine. And then nailed him in the nuts and took off. Right? There's no...
You grew up that way. My brother and I, he'll still run into guys.
Yeah.
And they'll talk about stuff.
The next, and 2 days later, we're best friends, right? I mean, it's all good. But I mean, those are the old days too. And there's a political analogy there where Ted Trimpa and I don't agree on much.
I love him.
I love Ted Trimpa.
Yeah, I do.
But we don't agree on much. But he's like my little brother, and those days are kind of going away, where you have friends that are like this powerful.
We were talking on a radio show, and it's been written again and again and again by great historians, but Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan. Tip's they're all both Depression Irish, and they would meet and they'd sit what's called the Truman balcony, and they'd put their feet up and have a scotch after work and kind of solve problems, but they knew each other. Right. Those days are gone.
Gone. And there was a day, even here in Denver, when I first came, where you could go out to dinner with folks and you could have drinks, probably more than you oughta, and people would get to know each other as people. What are you thinking? What are you interested in? What's your kids like? What do you want to get done here? And they'd be liberal Democrats, and it's still, but that's gone. And now it's all talking points and chucking javelins, and we never get anything done. And that's what I worry about. For my kid's 10, he needs to have people who want to try to get some things done.
Right now, I say this: America has become tribal, and greater than I even realized. But talk radio's tribal, the media's tribal. And tribal, Fox News became tribal. We were talking about Roger Ailes.
Yeah.
They made it tribal.
Masks are tribal.
Bingo.
Masks.
Tell that story.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised, frankly, over the weekend. I was in Atlanta, and the level of anger on airplanes among the staff, among people in the seats, whether they're pro-mask, anti-whatever. I don't know if anybody's really anti-mask, but anyway.
Oh, sure there are.
Well, I mean, but it's a metaphor, right? The mask is a metaphor about freedom, and you can't tell me what to do, and there's Irish, right? So, the story is, it's trivial, but one of the airlines, you're not allowed to speak to the flight attendant. And you're supposed to be...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you're supposed to be told to put up fingers.
Which finger?
Yeah, to what you want to drink, right?
Oh,
and so I said, I'm not doing that. I'm not 4 years old.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. I'm allowed to speak. And I'm a human, and I'm going to speak. So I'm 10 feet away from the woman. Hey, and I'm vaccinated. Yeah. Hey, I'd love a Diet Coke. She yells at me, put on your mask. And I said Diet Coke. She says it again. And I was like, this is odd. So I just went back to my book. Okay. I didn't get she denied me service. I'm like, okay, cool. So I hope she felt better. But this is where we are, is that they're going to insist on compliance. And they're going to feel good about it, and we're going to have to kowtow, and I refuse to.
The other point of this is Target, or I don't care where, Costco. There's some kid, he's 19 years old, he's getting paid minimum wage, and here comes, I'm coming in without my mask on.
Yeah.
And he's got a boss who tells the kid, who's probably got we're talking about growing up, he's probably got a pregnant girlfriend. He dropped out of high school, and he's getting paid, I don't know, $15 an hour, $12 an hour, and he says, please put on your mask. Now you're going to be a badass.
Yeah, right. No, and I'm just like, it's fine. Yeah. And if that's what it takes to bring us back to where we can be normal, lovely. But I mean, this is where we are, is that I got to be right, you must comply. You do not have the right to dissent. And that's going to fall of its own weight. It always has.
Every time.
You can go back hundreds of years, it always falls of its own weight. And that's, the left, I think, is more guilty than the right.
I do too.
The left is like, okay, now we're going to, be reasonable, do it our way. And it ain't going to work.
But authoritarianism, like when people talk about the line, the left and right, I believe it's a circle. I believe they touch. There isn't a left and a right. I mean, there is to some degree, but then it goes like this and it touches.
Yep.
And in that model, the authoritarianism is what really scares the hell out of me.
And that's why I think we've got the biggest opportunity for Republicans in 15 years.
But will they?
I don't think so. I mean, and because they've got to start talking to people like my wife, who's about as political as my shoe.
Yeah.
And yet she is passionate about our neighborhood, our child, her friends, our community, all that, right? And she's a big Trumper, but she had caucused for Hillary Clinton in 08. Okay, so here's the journey of a mom. And there's many like her, and that's who the Republican Party can go and turn into street warriors. But they're not speaking to her.
They won't do it. And there's that line that one of the reasons Donald Trump lost is all those ex-wives that he reminded them of their ex-husband.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Well, and there's something to that, right?
Please.
Right? I mean, they're like, when you're going to be a jerk, here's a guy who's extremely consequential.
Yes.
And yet went home at night and decided to be a jerk.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's nice to, the old days, you put the pay on the kitchen table, but if you're a jerk, you're a jerk.
Yeah.
And so I think, the Donald Trump program agenda was perfect. Most consequential
Agreed.
guy of my lifetime.
Agreed.
But then at the last quarter, I think he really cannot accept losing. I think there's something back there with Dad.
Need to be right.
Got to be right. Can't disappoint Dad. I'm going to show you I'm the real deal.
There's all kinds of these psychological profiles. I just finished one. Tony Schwartz, who nobody knows who he is. Schwartz wrote The Art of the Deal, and he's an interesting character, young guy, and he had done a piece on Trump, maybe in Atlantic or some left of center publication, and they had a cartoon of a tough Trump. Trump loved it, had it blown up, has it on his wall in his office. Trump, I think at the time, was like 38 years old or something, and he contacts him and he says, come to my office. And he comes to the office, and Trump said, people want me to write an autobiography. Would you like to write it? And Schwartz says, you're too young for an autobiography. And he said, well, how about a book? And so he kicks it around, and Schwartz says, we'll call it The Art of the Deal. Trump didn't call it The Art of the Deal.
Right.
He did. So he does this whole, and they're not writing the truth, but Trump gives them $250,000 and he's broke, and then he gives them a hunk of the book, makes them rich.
Yeah.
But he said it isn't true.
It isn't true.
And he, does a psychoanalysis of a young Donald Trump. And he tells a story. He goes to Mar-a-Lago with him. I guess he owns Mar-a-Lago then. And he said Trump blows off his family, doesn't talk to his family. This is in the piece. And then he finds out he's got Marla Maples on the side. So he's moveon.org. And so this guy who is incredibly flawed, but I'm more flawed than anyone. But why couldn't he, in the end, shake the man's hand like we said in boxing as a kid? You go shake the man's hand, he'd beat you. Why couldn't he do it?
Yeah, I think it is. There's something deep-seated there with a lot of men, who just really are still trying to prove to Dad that
Fred.
I've got it.
Proven to Fred.
Proven to Fred.
Fred was tough.
Fred was a tough guy.
Fred was tough. Yeah.
Tough guy. I grew up up there,
sure.
and remember I remember Fred Trump, and I remember when Donald first came around. But anyway, I think that's part of the problem, and that's what everybody has to get past.
Yeah.
Is and we look at the Republican Party here in Colorado now. I think Christy Burton Brown and the group that's got the 3-point plan at the top to really talk about what people care about. I think that's really hopeful.
But you got to have somebody who carries the message.
And they've got to go get county commissioners and city council people and those types of folks who can start out. It's the Trimpa plan, right? We start with the school board and then you build.
Yeah.
We need some there's some great state legislators. They got to talk more.
Sean Duffy's here, of course, one of the political forces in Colorado Republican Party. And I look at this stuff and it's like going back to it. So if your platform and the center planks of your platform is Donald Trump won and the vax doesn't work, and I'm doing this running gag like you're this weird Jehovah's Witness, you knock on somebody's door, you're canvassing, you're campaigning, can I help you? Donald Trump really won and the vax doesn't work. 71% of the states had a jab, slam.
Yeah.
What do they do?
Yeah, well, that's the problem. Yeah. And obviously we say that if you're not engaging in reality-based thinking, you're not going to win. And if you're out there saying, and you can believe anything you want, but you're not going to persuade people. I mean, you can go home at night and say, I hate the vaccine, or I hate, Donald, there's a suitcase of votes. Okay.
Fine.
Get a cup of coffee at night and, don't kick the cat or whatever.
Have
but
a nice day.
Yeah. But you got to go win. And so it's Al Davis time. Let's just win, baby.
Win, baby.
And they got to figure it out. And
the great Pat, I'll get you out of jail Saturday night to play Sunday. He got heat for that, but a lot of truth to it.
You gotta, and we see, and if you're concerned about the state, you're concerned about the country, at some point you gotta. My dad used to call these folks keepers of odd knowledge, kooks, right? Yeah. And so you gotta shelve it enough to win an election. Yeah. And we can't. I live in Douglas County. We can't just have Douglas and El Paso and everybody else.
Trump lost Douglas County.
Right. Yeah.
He lost El Paso.
And and 4 years before he'd won Pueblo.
Yeah, but he lost those other ones too.
Yeah. And that's because people are like, I'm tired of this. I'm worn out.
But again,
and it wasn't the election. Obviously, it's before the election, right? I think it was people were just tired of the constant Twitter conflict.
I mean, there's true believers, the Church of the Living Trump, but then there are also people afraid of him. They're afraid to speak against.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can't. We had a Trump flag on our house and all kinds of stuff. We kept waiting for the brick to come through the window, and that's where there are many people. I mean, my wife's tennis buddies, they had Trump buttons on their bags, but they were kind of underneath.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, they're like, hey, are you one?
Your closet.
Like the old Christians, right? They used to have a little fish.
Draw the fish.
Yeah,
right.
And
with your toe.
And so but there's a ton of them.
Yeah.
And I think the country in the main was worn out by Trump and his antics, but they loved a lot of what he did. And I think they just said, well, anybody but Trump. And now they got this guy, Biden, who, God help him.
He did rope-a-dope.
Yeah, totally.
Joe Biden did.
Still is. I mean, have you ever seen a visit to Denver by a president of the United States that was less covered than this one?
No.
I mean,
better yet, guys didn't show up.
Yeah, nobody shows up. I mean, the guy gets off Air Force One, and it's like, he's like, "Where's my grip?" Right? There's like, who's here? Who's here? Right? And that's always been kind of a thing. But
I said this when Trump came to hand out diplomas at the Academy. Nobody showed up for Trump.
Yeah, although there was the famous thing, he and Corey hugging and all that kind of stuff. But the point is, I think the Democrats know. And I've talked to a number of Democrats, as have you, who are just appalled by this guy, and they never would say it out loud. Never would say it out loud, but they're appalled at what we've got. And then Kamala, who's like, it's just the woman just.
All right, this is my plan. They're going to Agnew her.
Yeah, right. Yeah, here, take a couple hundred, babe, and head home.
Take a while. Yeah. Slide somebody in.
Yeah.
And then yank Joe.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, somebody's got to get an IQ above room temperature.
Oh, they're bad.
And I think that's why the opportunity to talk to people about homelessness, to talk about
junkies running the city,
about people. I mean, downtown Denver's become Mogadishu. I mean, it's awful. I work downtown. It's awful. It's just awful, and it's a shame because it's a beautiful town. But if you're at the point where, not unlike the 1970s, where you literally have to take back the signature park in your city, in your capital city, you have to take it back
and then lie about it.
And then lie about it. I mean, how much worse does it get when you
got rats?
You've just lost.
Dude, you've
lost
rats.
A park.
Yeah.
The most beautiful signature park in the capital city of Colorado, and they don't care. They put up a chain link fence and call it good, and they don't care about these people on the ground. They don't care. They don't care.
Remember the guy? Forgetting which one of the talking head lay down media geeks, but they were down to the first time, and they said, this is all caused there because there's big rats. The guy said, this is caused by food trucks.
Yeah. Taste of Colorado, yeah.
Wait a minute. Food trucks.
Yeah. And these, some of these rats need a license plate and a directional signal, right? And it's a buddy of mine runs a Christ Body downtown, homeless facility. And he's like, look, we can't do this. We've got to take care of these people. And anyway, it's off topic. But I mean, that's where Republicans, it seems to me. Go ahead.
No, that's my point.
You know,
I said, okay, here's this. No, well, vaccine doesn't work, and Donald Trump won. I said, no. Let it go.
Let it go. I mean, let it go. I mean, everybody's had an argument with a friend where you know you're right, but you'd rather have the friendship.
It's called talk radio.
Or it's called marriage, right? You know, and you'd rather keep your friendship, and you'd rather have the ability to continue to talk. And this whole idea of we're going to pound on your door and tell you the conspiracy theory du jour is make you feel good, but it's not going to make your state feel good. And it's not going to make your neighbors feel good.
Yeah, you fall on your sword, you die on your shield.
And you turn the state back over to wackadoos who are in the legislature. Bless them all. They're not lovely people.
They want to start shooting junk again.
Yeah.
I mean, they want to do this kind of thing.
I mean, they just don't understand. Well, but our problem is if we don't sell our brand, there are going to be more of them. I mean, we're down to, there's going to be more of them, and they're going to be in Douglas County, and it's going to be in, El Paso County, and it's going to be, and it's our fault.
It's with Sean Duffy in the shoot. I see Denver's in a vice, on this side pushing into Chicago, on this side pushing into San Francisco. Mm-hmm. We're going to end up in a bad place.
Yeah, I mean, and it reminds me, I was a kid in the 70s, but I used to go into New York City all the time with my mom. We'd go to the shows and stuff, and it was an open-air drug market. And it was Times Square. It was an open-air drug market, and without exaggeration. And Giuliani, the sane Giuliani, came in and just said, we're not doing this anymore, guys.
And what's happened to him?
Oh, I have no clue. I mean, I just, the few times I've met him, did years ago, delightful guy, funny. And now it's just, I've got to be right. I've got to be right. It's more than that. It's a lot more than that. But I mean, it's...
But look at Jenna Ellis, Lynn Wood, the Kraken. I mean, all these people, and as they systematically, incrementally...
destroy themselves.
The La Brea tar pit of politics.
Yeah.
And what do? We'll find somebody else.
Well,
Tina Peters.
It doesn't help. I teach communications internationally, actually, now. And one of the images I use is, you remember the monk who lit himself on fire in the square? Okay. Famous picture, right? And I start out with, don't be this guy.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. And not disrespectful to that man, but you light yourself on fire, and toward what end? I mean, you light up a room for an hour, and you're good.
What
are you doing?
The Irish monastery where the vow of silence, and every 10 years you're allowed to talk to the abbot. He comes in and said, "Can I speak?" He said, "It's cold."
It's right.
A decade later comes in, food's bad. Yeah, but he said, "Get the hell out of here. You've just been complaining since you got here."
Exactly. And we can't do it. And I think, there's folks it's not just me and Wadhams anymore, the older guys. It's it's the younger guys who are saying we got to win, and let's figure out how to do it. And there's a list of guys who really want to win. And I mean, look at Douglas County when the health department said, you will comply and you will do this and you'll stay in your house and hide in the bathroom, whatever they wanted us to do. The three commissioners said no, thank you, because it's a crappy governance model that some bureaucrats are going to tell your elected officials how to run their county, and they said no, thank you. That takes some testicular fortitude. I
agree,
and that's what we need. That works because they're talking to real people.
But it was smart and it was brilliant and it was done smoothly, and I looked at it and went, good move, good career move.
Because but it was thinking about how to represent the people and what they actually want.
Got time. Worst politician in Colorado you've ever watched in action? Who was the one that you went, oh man?
Darrell Glenn.
Wow.
Darrell Glenn.
Wow.
And there's a list. I mean, somebody will tag me about some of the guys I work for. So
Go ahead.
But I mean, I just remember and he was a nice fella, really nice fella,
really good guy,
really great guy.
Yeah.
But I remember there was a debate, and all the guys were about. And I'm vertically challenged too, but all the guys were about 6 foot, and his staff didn't get him a podium.
Yeah.
And you couldn't see the guy.
Yeah.
And I thought, nobody's taking care of this guy. And then when he went up against Bennett, he was all fixated on Trump. And it was Trump. And I'm like, well, baby, what do you want to do? Yeah, what do you want to do? Yeah. And why do you want to be a U.S. Senator and all that? And I just thought, man, we could have won that election.
he did the radio show, and Chuck Bonnewell and I and Mark Crowley were in Cleveland. And we had our show there. It was one of the greatest experiences. Chuck was on his game. We were working. And he did the show, and he kind of got roughed up a little bit. And I said, hey, come back tomorrow. Never saw him again.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And I've seen that now in the Republican Party. If somebody tags you with a jab, they don't want to come back.
Well, and they have their little plan, right? They have their 3-point plan or 5-point plan. He did, but I mean, it's the old Mike Tyson thing. Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face.
Or John Gotti said, "Everybody is a gangster. A real gangster walks in."
Right, right.
John Gotti said that.
Yeah,
it's true.
I think it was more with Darrell. It was the disappointment of an opportunity lost, and he, and not willing to adjust when the time was time to adjust.
Who was the best you ever saw?
It's going to sound self-serving, but Bill Owens.
Owens was great.
He had a 3-point, the 3 E's that he lived on for 8 years. He was a great debater. I mean, I think if one time, there was time when he was thinking about maybe running for president, and I would have loved to have seen an Owens-Obama debate.
What happened?
I think at the end of the day, like many men, Bill, who could have really charged the national stage, I think it's like, do I really want to do this?
There's a lot of stories that swirled around.
Well, there's been stories on every human being in office, and I think
they're real, they're true.
Bill is a guy who sacrificed to the point where he really financially sacrificed his entire time in public service.
Now he's making dough now.
And he's successful, he's happy, he's doing great, and he's just a dear friend.
We're talking about best and worst. When you watch these guys today, who's here that we watch right now and go, wow, that guy's good? I think it's Jared Polis.
Oh, he's smart as a whip, right?
Absolutely.
And he's crafty. I mean, what Democrat's going to come out and say, get rid of the income tax, right?
But he's going to invisible hand that to getting carbon taxing. Mark my words.
But it's great.
Looks good on paper.
Great. And then we're scrambling, explaining why you can't do it, instead of saying, sure, I'll introduce the bill.
Yeah.
Right? And let's do it together. If I were the minority leader in the Senate, I would have said, great, Governor, we're going to have the news conference. Well, I'll write the bill.
Yeah.
I'll see you Tuesday on the steps.
Sean Duffy's here. Final couple of things. What's the future? I mean, making predictions is always the wrong thing to do, but I tell you, that doesn't look good.
And you and I are generally optimistic. Yeah. I mean, we're not the Irish guys, no matter how dark it gets, keep pulling down the shades.
My grandma would say, no good will come of this.
Yeah. My mother...
I made the Little League team.
Yeah. My mother and I used to watch baseball together, and in the first inning, if somebody got a home run on the other team, she goes, well, that game's shot.
Yeah, shut up.
Yeah, we're done here. Yeah. And so I got to believe that the commonsensical nature of people in my neighborhood who are in the middle are going to rise up and say, we've had it. And I think it's going to happen. Enough of this. Happened in the 70s when there was never going to be another Republican elected to anything. Reagan. Here they come. Yeah. And there's somebody out there who's going to inspire the country.
This is my dead horse. Nixon lies the Republican Party in ashes. Jimmy Carter wins.
Right.
And everybody said it's the end of the world. Who's sitting on the bench?
Yeah. Ronald Reagan. Nobody wanted.
Certainly, the Bushes didn't want him, the establishment didn't want him, but the voters wanted him.
They wanted him.
And the Democrats crossed over and voted for him. Where's that guy in Colorado?
He's sitting on a county commission or a city council someplace. And he's thinking about what the hell's going on in his county or his city, and it's enough. And he's going to show up. He or she, I don't mean to, he in the generic sense, are going to start talking and saying, "Who?" Yeah. And because
they better hurry up.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the clock's ticking and the train's leaving, and you got to get on the train. But I mean, I just really see a lot of these folks who actually give a damn and can talk about why they give a damn.
Talk about the Irish curse.
My dad, thank you for that. I've never talked about this publicly, but my dad, rest his soul, he was an insurance agent for 40 years, door to door. 40, put 3 of us through college. And people would piss him off. He'd say, well, they're only patting you on the back to find a soft spot.
Oh, sure.
Right? The old thing. And anyway, talk about black Irish, right?
Oh, man.
Anyway, he said he would get pissed if somebody would do something to him. And he'd say, well, don't worry about it, or do something to us. And he'd say, don't worry about it, we'll put the Irish curse on him. I thought, well, that's interesting.
Oh, man.
And sure, almost every single time, something not wonderful would happen to this individual.
Yeah.
And there's an old prayer in the Catholic Church, prayer for a happy death.
Yes.
He said, well, we should pray for a happy death today.
Yeah, my grandma, my kids are on to this now, the banshee, and
Yeah.
Grandma knew, but Grandma was the total, but they're famine children, or children of the famine, and as really smart, wiser people than I'll ever be said, they brought that mindset.
Right.
So even though your dad was born here, he's influenced by, Black 47.
Yeah.
He's influenced by it.
Yep. And when my mom died, she had hoarded, not hoarded, hoarded, but they had a pantry full of canned goods.
Sure.
And full.
No.
And my dad went downstairs and he didn't even know it was there.
Yeah, right.
And he said, well, just in case. You never know. And so he kept stuff, just in case.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but here's the difference. But my mom and dad believed that tomorrow was going to be better. They believed in this country. They worked like dogs to put us through school, to take care of us, give us 3 hots and a cot and a lot more than that. And there's still these people around. They're not old, they're young. And they believe in this country, and you and I do, and it's going to turn around. This anger, this dysfunction, this Bidenist authoritarian crap is not going to stand. And
but you have to offer
a vision. And I think it's coming. I really do. And I see some hope. I see some folks who are but you got to get out there and you got to get in the arena and you got to talk to people and you got to knock on their door and tell them, ask them, not tell them, ask them.
Yeah, no. I always say, instead of coming up with the nonsense that I've been watching now for almost 8 months, there has to be, and I envision this working couple in North Carolina where, my mom and dad, my dad was a working poor guy. And he had his, but what did he want?
Right.
And he was a lifelong Democrat, but they were Truman Democrats. They were Jack Kennedy Democrats.
Yeah, that's different.
And the old man would have had nothing to do with this.
Right. And the other thing is I think our politicians need to do a better job of knocking on your door or tapping you on the shoulder and asking you how you're doing. Yeah. Nobody wants to be lectured at anymore. We've been lectured at for a year and a half about everything. Yeah. And it's time to just ask people, how you doing? How's your heart? How's your soul? What can I do to serve you?
You know, the Irish bars.
Yeah.
They were there's a reason why Joseph P. Kennedy, the father of the ambassador, remember, he becomes a force in Boston Irish. He owns a bar, owns a couple bars, but he owns one bar, and they become the centerpiece, and that becomes the politics, and it becomes Joseph P. Kennedy, Joseph Patrick himself.
And it's a great focus group, right? It's the best focus group in the world, is sitting and listening to people.
I've told these guys before, come in, sit in the chair you're in, put on some headsets, don't say a word, and listen.
Yep.
For a week.
Yep.
Just listen. Owens did that. I mean, in fairness, and like I said, I haven't seen him in a long time, but Owens was smart. Hank Brown, Allard, there were some really good guys.
And they were kind people.
Yeah, and they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, and the thing about like Hank, who is the gentlest, smartest guy
really
going,
good,
right?
Really good man.
But he'll ask you, Steve, to this day, if you sit with him, how are you doing? What's going on? Here's a guy, the president of the University of Colorado, United States Senator. Yeah. He could be like, hey, you want to hear about me? And he's always, how are you doing? Yeah. What's new? And how's your kid?
What was the name of their parish priest? What was he? Father who?
Oh, Father Paul. He was he and the Pope were Polish. They used to ski together.
Wow.
And he ended up in Mount Hope, New Jersey.
There you go.
And the church was about the size of this room.
Yeah.
And his name was Paul Krajewski. And he sounded exactly like Lawrence Welk. And my mother used to make fun of him.
I did an interview with Lawrence Welk.
You did?
One of the great highlights of... He was wonderful. I mean, he was a put on himself. He didn't speak English till he was but he was born in this country. And they were north or South Dakota. But, and he made fun of himself. He was, he was a phone interview. And then his son, Larry Welk, starts K-Tel Records. Remember K-Tel
Oh,
Records?
gosh,
that was
I didn't
Larry
know
Wall.
that.
And
Wow.
I met him.
Yeah,
And
but-
he loved his old man. Talked a lot about the old man.
Yeah, I mean, Father Paul, who was a sweet guy, big man,
Yeah.
he and the Pope were buddies. And he ended up, I believe, this may be incorrect, but I believe he ended up in a camp in World War II and got out.
Sure, of course.
And was rounded up.
They went to underground seminaries.
Yeah, they did. He did.
No,
and
they did.
and they ended up, and Father Paul ended up in the same rock quarry as Father Wojtyła.
Yeah, sure.
So I mean, here's a guy in the middle of nowhere, New Jersey, and and everybody's got a story.
Those old priests were better guys.
Bitter?
Better guys.
Yeah, they were. Well, and they cared about their parish. I mean, they knew everybody in the parish and what they were doing. And
I mean, they were better men, I think.
yeah, we lost
don't know.
those ties, right? The neighbors, like our little neighborhood in Highlands Ranch. I mean, we're, everybody watches out for everybody else, and that I missed. I missed until I moved into this neighborhood.
Howard said this as a final, then I'll give you the last comment.
Sure.
It was like the jungle drums and Tarzan movies. If you screwed up by the time you got home, the drums knew.
Yeah, right.
Your mom knew.
Yeah.
I don't even know how that happened.
Yeah,
it was like, listen to the drums.
Yeah,
Your
now
head
the
numb.
moms have texts, so think about that. So yeah. Peter. First of all, thanks.
Oh, please.
It's always good to
the best.
spend time with you. I just believe, and maybe I'm a Pollyanna, but I love this country. I love Colorado. I live here by choice. Everybody, when I was done with Owens, they were like, "You're going back east." It's like, no, I'm staying. And
You ever go back and look and go, it's like my grandma talked about Ireland. Now you know why I left.
yeah.
Look at this.
Yeah, the old sod is, there's some challenges. But, I see this and I see people shaking their heads, normal people, not people kind of marinated in the sauce like we all are with politics. And I see people just really getting more and more. Our school board, for example, in Douglas County is completely out of control. And lovely people, but just out of control. And I just see this energy now on our side to change things, to get some community back, to get some common sense back. But you and I agree 100%, who's going to be the person, and they're just not there yet.
I'm a huge Bob Seger fan, and Seger does that. Who's going to wear the gypsy leathers?
Yep.
Who's going to run to Fire Lake? Somebody has to.
Yeah.
And the people that I'm seeing right now, they scare me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking to some folks who are ready to run, and I don't do candidates anymore. There's a reason why I'm 5 foot tall and I have white hair, right? Thanks to candidates.
Hang on, it just gets better.
Jeez.
I know.
But there's some guys who are and ladies who are pretty exciting who are coming up, and so we'll see. But we're going to get there.
Come back ASAP. Sean Duffy, everybody. Dr. McCallum, thank you for making all this possible. This is the third episode of The Shoot. Next time we do The Shoot, Rich Wyatt. If you remember Gunsmoke's, Rich Wyatt went to federal prison. He's home now. He's going to talk. He's going to shoot. The one and only Sean Duffy. Dr. McCallum, thank you. Thanks, everybody, for watching. You've made these shows successful by watching, and that's why I got Mark Crowley over here and Billy Thorpe on the other side of the wall. Have a great day, and tell your friends about The Shoot. I'll see you on the radio show, 5 a.m. You pick the morning. I'm generally here. Thank you.